All right, in this video, we're finally getting outside of the skeletal muscle. We're going to look at both cardiac and smooth muscle. We just touch on these. Again, the majority of stuff we're looking at is going to be skeletal muscle, but these are incredibly important, obviously. So we start with smooth muscle. Obviously, smooth muscle is going to be called smooth muscle because it lacks striations. It lacks striations because the sarcomeres and the myofilaments are randomly organized. So there's no real set pattern. So that's why there's no striations. They are shorter. They only have a single nucleus. Now it lacks transverse tubules. There's reasons for some of this stuff. But we're not going to get into it. But I do want you to know for sure it lacks striations, and that's why it is called smooth. Now, there are two types of smooth muscle, multi-unit and visceral. And visceral can sometimes be called single unit. So multi-unit and single unit. Now the visceral, hopefully you remember, if you've been with me, you know that I make a big deal on visceral is a word that means organ. And it means a different, by definition, an organ is anything that has more than one type of tissue in it. So every bone is an organ. But this is talking about, viscera is talking about organs that we think of, like a heart, the stomach, the intestinal tract. Now, obviously, it's not on the heart because the heart's cardiac, but that's the viscera we're talking about. These cells respond as one unit. That's why it is called a single unit smooth muscle. So the muscles inside the stomach that make up the lining of the stomach, while there are millions of these muscle cells, these smooth muscle cells, they work as one unit. They have what's called rhythmicity, which means that when something happens to this one, it passes along to the next one and so forth. So it's going to cause this wave of contraction, and we call that peristalsis. Now, visceral smooth muscle is going to line the walls of most hollow organs, and it is the most common type of smooth muscle. It is going to contract slow but steady. On the other side, this multi-unit smooth muscles, these function as separate units. That's why they're called multi-units. These are going to be stimulated by neurons and hormones, but more in particular, these are going to be quick response muscles, where visceral is slow response muscles. These are going to be quick. The main area that you would probably want to know is that little iris of the eye, the color part of your eye, and it controls that little black spot in the middle called the pupil. And so when I am in a dark room, these muscles are going to go and cause vasodilation of the pupil, so more light gets in. But as soon as light shines on it, boom, it's going to quickly constrict the pupil, and that dilated pupil is going to constrict and limit it, and it's going to respond very quickly. And so multi-unit smooth muscle responds quickly, where visceral smooth muscle responds slowly. Multi-unit is going to, each cell acts on its own, where visceral is called single unit. That means that all of them act as one. So I hope that those help. And again, anything that starts having where I have multiple cells acting as one, there's going to be gap junctions, because this allows the cells to have the same stuff pass through from one cell to the other. Smooth muscle has some things that you can remember, but the big thing about it is, the very first thing is, smooth muscle lacks troponin. Remember, troponin was what was on the actin, and it held tropomyosin in place. Troponin is not in smooth muscle. Instead, it is a molecule called calmodulin, and it is what is used. So remember, in smooth muscle, no troponin, it is calmodulin. Now, the other thing is, and this is in both the smooth muscle and in cardiac muscle, it is not just acetylcholine. It is acetylcholine and this substance called norepinephrine. Now, what I want you to do real quick is to remember, norepinephrine and epinephrine are equivalent to I'm going to just use a general name called adrenaline. And if you can remember that, you'll kind of remember this when we get into the nervous system. See, these are two different controls. We're going to learn in the nervous system that you have two controls of your subconscious organs. We're going to have what's called the parasympathetic, all right, and we'll put PS, and then sympathetic. Parasympathetic is called the rest and digest. Sympathetic is called the fight or flight. So under normal conditions, this is controlling, let's say we're going to control, I'll make that into a little thing, my heart. All right, we all know the heart looks like that. And so we're going to find that the parasympathetic nervous system uses acetylcholine. And in this keeps my heart beating kind of steady. But if I get scared, let's say you're watching, if I decided to put a little jump scare in this video, that would be a good idea. I should do that, but I'm not. But and I have some kind of face just jump out at you real quick. You have this quick fight or flight mechanism. The sympathetic nervous system kicks in. And it comes in, and it's going to drop off. And I shouldn't have used the heart because, again, that's cardiac muscle. But I think we all can understand what's going on here. This is going to use norepinephrine or adrenaline. This is going to cause the heart rate to increase. This is why your heart races when you get scared. Now, every system, whether it's that or I can put the lungs here, it's going to look like two little eyes, but I could put this being the digestive system, all the little small intestines in here, and then the large intestines. All of them have this dual control. And so I'll have acetylcholine on one side and norepinephrine, which we'll kind of consider adrenaline, on the other side. And hopefully everybody knows the fight or flight, the scared part is the norepinephrine because it is adrenaline. All right. So both smooth muscle and cardiac muscle are controlled subconsciously. They are part of what we will learn of as the autonomic nervous system. Because of that, there's two controls, parasympathetic and sympathetic. The sympathetic, which is the fight or flight, uses adrenaline. We all kind of know an adrenaline rush, but in our book we call it norepinephrine. The normal ruling class under calm conditions, the parasympathetic, is going to use acetylcholine. Now, these smooth muscles are slower to contract and relax. They are more resistant to fatigue, and so those are two big things. And I hope that makes sense. But we'll talk more about this guy, norepinephrine, in a little bit, especially when we get into the nervous system. So cardiac muscle, again, cardiac muscle is only in the heart. It is not in the blood vessels. It is only in the heart. It is a striated muscle. The fibers are held together by intercalated discs. These intercalated discs are going to be gap junctions and also desmosomes. And I am not going to try to write desmosomes out there, but I'll put gap junctions like I wrote gyro or something. Anyway, they have a single nucleus. They're like a normal cell with that. They are rhythmic. They are self-exciting. You do not have to have nervous system input. You could actually, if the heart has a blood supply, it can beat on its own for a while. It doesn't need any outside input. It has its own built-in pacemaker, which you'll see when you get into it. It cannot have tetanic contractions. It is not one. It is made to where that can't happen. So you don't have a heart cramp. All right. This is a little chart of the three different types. Again, the big thing is, remember, Caldemin over here on smooth muscle. I can't spell it, but with all this on here, Caldemin instead of Troponin. We have these two, skeletal and cardiac, are both striated. Cardiac has intercalated discs. All right. We do need to know that these two, they have dual innervation. You're going to use acetylcholine and norepinephrine, adrenaline to control them. All right. So not, we're not digging too deep into these. I'm hoping that makes sense. And again, we'll just continue on to the next chapter or the next video. Take care.